Glory to Jesus Christ. Good evening. Recently I read a quote. I listen to a lot of sermons online. I watch a lot of things. I read quite a bit. And I actually came across a quote from a British theologian. And he says that the world has not yet to see what God can do with a man totally dedicated to him. When I read that quote, I began to think about what that actually meant. And I said to myself, is it true? Is it true that the world has never really seen anybody that's truly holy? I mean, yes, Jesus came, he became man. But, I also want to talk about how we often relate the Virgin Mary to the Ark of the Covenant, right? The Virgin Mary is one of these people that fall under this category of actually being a person that the world has seen that has done what he asked her to do. God asked her to become the vessel, the new Ark of the Covenant. Mary, at a young age, and I realize that many people argue the fact that because of what people believe as sola scriptura, but we have other different writings that we have in the church that teach us about the life of the Virgin Mary. And when the Virgin Mary was about 3 years of age, she actually had went into the temple. There was something specific that she needed to do. Nobody quite knew what that was, except some of the prophets along the way had predicted it. Isaiah and Malachi and Micah and those different prophets, they knew something was coming, but of course they couldn't put the pieces together. It is a vast and untapped potential of life completely surrendered to God's will. That's what the Virgin Mary was. She went into the temple and she completely submitted herself to God. Now, a lot of times people, and today, we don't venerate the Virgin Mary like we used to, even in the Orthodox Church, because one of the oldest, I had read an article as well, one of the oldest hymns that they had ever found now, from the 3rd century, the oldest hymn that they'd ever found was a hymn glorifying the Virgin Mary. Today we celebrate her Dormition. Today we celebrate the day when she died and she was taken up into the kingdom of heaven to reign with Christ, right? He is the King. And oftentimes people argue the fact, well, how can you call her the Queen of Heaven? But if you understand the Davidic line, the mother of the king becomes queen. And therefore, the Virgin Mary is the Queen of Heaven. We have seen examples of her throughout the centuries. She has appeared to different places during wartime and different famines and plagues. And she has appeared numerous times to comfort, console us. And for whatever reason, everybody in the Protestant world wants to diminish her. I don't know about you, but my mom's a pretty special person to me. And now you're talking about God's mother. You're talking about this woman that was able to bear her. Now, if you think about the Ark of the Covenant that was built during the time of Moses, God gave Moses exact parameters. He told him how tall it was going to be. He told him how wide. He told him how thick. He told him every dimension possible. God had told him that there's a way he was going to build it. And when the Ark of the Covenant was in the temple, within the tabernacle, the overshadowing of God would come down, and that's when God's presence would be known. And it was also instructed that there was only a few people that were able to actually be in the presence of the Ark of the Covenant. As a matter of fact, if anybody touched it, they would drop dead. No one was allowed to touch the Ark of the Covenant. Now, without meaning any disrespect, if you are talking about a piece of wood overlaid with gold, with a couple of cherubim on it, and it was holy enough to bring God's presence, imagine the person that was allowed to hold Christ in her womb. I mean, think about it. I mean, we're talking about the Ark of the Covenant, this inanimate object, and this living person that held Christ in her womb. And we're not supposed to glorify and raise her name up in hymns and thank God for the choice that she made that day? That day when Gabriel came to her, he told her the message that he was going to give her, and she said, let it be done the way that you want, that it's been said, right? She first asked the question, how's it going to be? How's this going to happen? I've never known a man. And God, in his infinite wisdom, knew her heart. And therefore, she becomes this woman that holds and becomes the Ark of the Covenant for the glory of the Lord to come upon this world. There was 3 things that the Ark of the Covenant held in it. The 3 things were the manna from heaven, right? The manna every day on the ground for 40 years. When the children of Israel were roaming around the desert, they got this stuff like coriander seed. It was a white fluffy stuff that they ate and made bread and had every bit of nourishment that they needed. There was nothing lacking from it. And every day they were supposed to get their day's supply, or their daily bread, so to speak, every day on the ground. The only day that they were allowed to get 2 days' worth was on the Sabbath, because they weren't allowed to work on the Sabbath. And if they did get too much, the next day it would be spoiled and full of worms. But whoever got a little bit had enough, and whoever got too much was taken away from them. And then what is the other thing? The other thing that was in the Ark of the Covenant was the staff that Aaron's budding staff, the almond branch that sprouted almond sprouts to signify who was going to be the high priest. And then finally, the 10 Commandments were laid inside the Ark of the Covenant. And as they were going around the desert, all the tribes, all the people, when they moved, the tabernacle and the Ark of the Covenant was in the center, and in the form of a cross, all the different tribes were located. And as they moved, they followed the Ark throughout the desert. For 40 years they did it. Certain days, they would go for days and days and days, and then there were specific times when God would tell them, stop, build camp, I am going to come and visit my people. And over and over again for 40 years, the cycle of life happened. People at one point, everybody at one point died that had been alive, except Moses, Joshua, and Caleb. And right before going into the promised land, Moses was not even able to go in there. But now you have the Ark of the Covenant that we call the Virgin Mary. Again, we actually relate her to the burning bush. We relate her again to the ladder in Jacob's vision. We have all those things. That's why those Old Testament readings are here. That's why we read those New Testament readings. So now what do you have? You have the new Ark of the Covenant, the Virgin Mary, and what did she contain in herself? She contained, first of all, Christ, the bread of life. The one that supplied, that never runs out. The one that gives and gives and gives, and its holiness and virtues. As we consume that bread of life, it gives us the strength to fortify us and help us to endure whatever it is that this world has to give us. Right? And within her also was the great high priest. Again, descendants. The great high priest. John the Baptist was also in the lineage of the high priest, of Aaron, and that's why he was able to baptize Jesus at the River Jordan. And then finally, the 10 Commandments, the Word himself, the Logos, was inside the Ark of the Covenant. And for those 9 months, the Virgin Mary, she ran for her life at one point, going to Egypt, the place that at one time that the children of Israel had found themselves for 427 years in prison, now became the haven for God and his family. Joseph in his understanding came and said, I'm going to follow this woman, I'm going to be with her, I am going to serve her because she's got the Son of God within her. And she and him went down to Egypt, and at one point they were able to come back. She gave birth in Bethlehem. Again, Bethlehem, the house of bread. Okay? Bethlehem is the place where Jesus was born. And all of time had changed. The Ark of the Covenant for 60 years dwelt on this planet. For 60 years. It's believed she was right around 60 years old when she drew her last breath. And during her lifetime, it was said, the apostles and the different writings, they said that she would go to all the places to Gethsemane, to Golgotha, to the different places that had transpired. And she would go there and she would pray. And she would go and kneel before her son and worship and pray to God for all the mercy for the people. And right before she died, if you have not read the story about what happens while we celebrate the Dormition, she prayed. And last night during the hymns, you can hear that. She prayed that all the apostles would come to her. She wanted to see them one last time, to give them one last vote of courage, to give them one last word from her lips. Because the angel Gabriel had come to her and said, in 3 days, you're going to be taken. And at that moment, she asked, everybody but Thomas appeared. They're all there. Paul, Peter, all the disciples, all the apostles came from different places. They just vanished wherever they were from and appeared. For whatever reason, Thomas wasn't there. And at that moment, she fell asleep. She was put into the ground. And then after that, Thomas came and he was like, please open the tomb. I got to see her body. I got to venerate her. I got to kiss her. And when they opened the tomb, her body was gone. That's what we call the Dormition. She was assumed up into heaven. It's not just the assumption as our Catholic brothers do. There's all of that transpired. She was taken up, and now in body she is there. St. Gregory, he often talks about her. If you read about his sermons, he talks about how the Virgin Mary was rivaling the angels. Because any of the angels were not able to do the things that the Virgin Mary did. So I would argue with this theologian that said that the world has never seen anybody fully dedicated to God. Because we have. And because of her example, we the Orthodox, we come before and we bow down not to her as a God, but as a person that said yes to God. The whole idea is that she said yes. She accepted what God had to say. What would we do if we actually accepted what God had us to say? I got called into the priesthood, and before I went, my spiritual father warned me that it would be hard. He told me that that the enemy would use every means necessary to attack me throughout my priesthood. And it's been like that ever since. It's been like that. One step after the other has been an uphill battle because I desire to get closer to God. I want to be like this woman. I want to be like this woman that was so close to her son that she was taken up into heaven. She was there, and she is there, and she intercedes on our behalf. Yes, I know. People are going to say that it's not in the scriptures. We're not reading that. The sola scriptura, blah, 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 blah. You know what? They can believe whatever they want to believe. For 2,000 years, the church has been believing that the Virgin Mary has been holy, and we have lifted her up as somebody to be revered. And I don't understand why people are so quick to be able to dismiss her and her holiness. To dismiss everything that she is to mean that we dismiss what God has done through humanity. So let us glorify the Lord today as we celebrate today the Dormition of our Most Holy Lady. And let us thank the Lord for her presence in our life and glorify the Lord for all that she's done in our lives. In the name of the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit.